Hello and welcome to the 81 All Out podcast. Like many of you listening, I'm deeply saddened by the tragic events that are unfolding in India. Some of my closest friends have been directly affected by the coronavirus, either because they have tested positive and they are recovering, or because they are grieving after the loss of their loved ones. We at 81 All Out have been discussing how we can show our solidarity for what is happening and how we can contribute. So we have decided that all the funds that we receive for the support of our show, we have decided that over the months of May and June, it will be donated to UNICEF, which is currently raising funds for the fight against COVID in India. They are delivering vital supplies and they are providing valuable support on the ground. For our part, we have decided to match your contributions for up to $800. And we hope that will be a small contribution in this big fight against this virus. So please follow the link in the show notes as you usually do. We understand that you can donate to any organizations that you wish in your own capacity. But in this case, we too will be matching that amount till a certain cap. And for whatever you donate in May and June, will go towards that. And we will also be contributing.
In the air, Srijan takes it! India win!
He'll come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is your host, Siddhartha Vaidyanathan. And I'm happy today to be chatting about a topic that has fascinated me for a long time, which is the topic of cricket fandom. Why do we support teams and the players that we do? What draws us to form the loyalties for sports teams? And how does this relationship build over time? Do you fall out of love with teams and then do you fall in love with them again? And the various other strands that we can think of. So to narrow down the scope of this discussion, I have picked my favorite team in the IPL, not in terms of favorite that you are thinking. It's not like I'm looking at them from a fan perspective, but from the point of view of a writer and a follower of cricket, I find the concept of CSK and Chennai Super Kings very fascinating. And, I'm always interested to speak to people about their fandom for the team. I find it slightly different from other teams. And I'm not able to put it in words, but hopefully the guests today will put it in words. It's also a fascinating team because they were one of the two teams to also be banned for 2 years from the IPL. And then they came back. They are also the only team which has had the icon player from 2008. Dhoni has been there from the beginning and he continues to be in the team. And there are a few other players also. The constant thread with 2008 is still there. So anyway, let us explore all that about CSK. To talk to me about this, I have, of course, Ashoka with me. Ashoka, our regular 81 All-Outer. Hi, Ashoka. I see you're making some billions in Clubhouse these days.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yes, it be.
Hi. So you can follow Ashoka on Clubhouse. He's in usually some very interesting rooms. Some 3 people are there in the rooms, but I think they're talking about some high-level next generation fund days. And when I get into the room, Ashoka stops talking. So that is making it even more mysterious. So I can't even enter that room. But anyway, also a very special welcome to Tejas from Melbourne. Tejas, who is a basketball and cricket fan. Somebody who I have been following on Twitter for a while, and somebody who's very passionate and knowledgeable. Very important word. Knowledgeable about cricket. Hi, Tejas.
Thanks, Henry. Nice to be here.
Yeah, hi. So Tejas is on Twitter. I'll link his Twitter handle and things. You can follow him. Also, a special welcome to legend, actually. We have a celebrity here on the show today. So special welcome to S.A. Arvind, who is Amazon Prime star. I'm sure many of you would have watched his show on Amazon Prime, stand-up comic. Big fan of Leeds United. Such a big fan that fans of Leeds United are, often contact him to find out what is happening in Leeds United games and all that. So, hi, Arvind. How are you?
Hi, Sidri. Good to be here. All good here. Thank you.
Great to have you here. In fact, the one time I've met you is at the stand-up comedy show that you did here in the US. And it feels a little odd for me to not see you in the role of a comic. But always nice to speak to you about CSK. I think you have a interesting relationship with CSK, right? Whatever you predict, the opposite happens or something.
No, that used to be the myth, and then I stopped playing fantasy, and it's all been fine since then. It's been upwards since then. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so anyway, so let's get to this topic. So there are a lot of things to talk about when it comes to CSK. So let me start off by first asking these guys. I know that Tejas is a big fan of basketball, and he follows the Cleveland Cavaliers. You probably follow other sports and other teams as well. So talk a bit about, going back to say 2008 when the IPL was all new and fresh, and when it started. Obviously, you being from Chennai would have had a big role to play in maybe choosing the team. But, talk a bit about coming in fresh into like the IPL and forming this relationship with this team.
Yeah, it was an interesting time because in 2008, I was actually based in Goa at the time doing my engineering, my first year. So I just moved away from home. So I was with friends with a lot of guys from Bangalore and Mumbai and things like that. So I remember just before the IPL as well, I believe there was an ICL season as well, where I think the Chennai Superstars won the league. Yeah, they won the league or something like that. So I remember there used to be a lot of sledging and banter about those games. And then when the IPL came, that kind of carried over. So that's how it kind of started. And then what happened was, I had my exams and then my semester got over. And I came home and there was still about a week left in the IPL. And I remember walking into my childhood bedroom and there was a blast of yellow in my face because my brother had made all the curtains yellow, the bed sheets yellow and all of that. And that for the first time was a real slap in the face about how big the IPL actually had become, because it's different when you're away from the city. But then when you came to Chennai, you realize how big a connection the team had made with the city and, the kind of loyalty that had already built in such a short span of time. So that was really the first moment where it became big to me. And then, watching my dad, who was a very dispassionate follower of cricket till that point, more reluctant because my mom, my grandfather, me were all big fans of cricket. But he was really into the IPL. Like he had bought in all the way. So it was really fascinating to see all those elements come together.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashoka, tell us a bit about what you remember from that time and what was your general thought also of this whole IPL and, as he said, the ICL had happened and people had, I'm sure people watched and enjoyed a bit of the ICL, but at that time, T20 was still like, okay, whatever, one fun thing, hit and giggle and all people were saying. So tell us a bit about your memories of that time and also like early CSK memories.
Yeah, so there was no strong association, at least in 2008, right? Like when 2007 World Cup happened and everyone, including the team, was surprised that they won the World Cup. And then we had IPL, and if you remember, we had like icon players. So at that point in time, Sachin loyalty was an all-time high, but unfortunately he was in Mumbai. So it was all like window shopping. Like you go walk through the mall, you see different things, and hey, this guy's in this team, that guy's in that team. So let's watch what this is all about. But I think the CSK loyalty came slightly, at least a year or two later, when the team started having an identity of its own. And a fan base of its own, and the way they approach the game is quite distinct from the other teams in the league. They tend to stand out primarily because of Dhoni's persona and also because of the continuity, right? Like the players that play a game keep playing through the season. So all these form quite a bit of a character for that team. And obviously, being from Chennai, that kind of a thing appeals to me at least, and therefore the fandom started like a year later or a year or two later. But first year at least it was all window shopping. We didn't even know what the hell this was. Like everyone is playing, like Bangalore was playing a test team, so we were all wondering how would they win the IPL. So
Chandapal and
Sunil Joshi was leading the bowling
Twitter
attack.
legend Wasim Jafar.
Yeah. So it was all fun and games in the first year. I mean, the question of fandom only comes from, or at least serious fandom comes from 2009 or 2010. Till in the beginning, it was all fun. It was just
I agree. I mean, the big confusion I remember early on was that the players that you supported were playing for other teams. Like you said, Sachin was playing, and then Ganguly fans who were in Bangalore had to saw him in KKR and all these other sort of conflicts. So Arvind, how was it for you? And tell us a bit about also first of all, the early impressions of the IPL and T20 cricket, but also of your memories of the fandom. And also, did you come from some other fandom? I mean, were you a football fan well before that? Or were you a fan of some other team well before that?
Yeah, so looking back at it, I've had a very underdog streak about me in terms of all the teams I support, right from football being Leeds United from 2002, or basketball being Dallas Mavericks from the Don Nelson era. So there's always this thing for, hey, in cricket, I used to be an Andy Flower and Mark Waugh fan. I was never a fan of Indian cricket team per se, because everybody in my class used to do that. I'm like, hey, I'm not going for that. So I've realized that some attention-seeking behavior is manifesting itself in this way.
Mark Waugh underdog. How is he an underdog?
So Mark Waugh, so all these underdogs have a context. Okay, Mark Waugh, in view of '96 World Cup, he was pinned against Lara and Sachin. Okay. So therefore, he was always the lesser of the three, and therefore, anybody who doesn't get that attention, I always feel like I should go and support them. There is this some kind of underdog thing about it. So when it came to IPL starting, in fact, to answer your ICL history, that's something that really appealed to me, because a lot of Tamil Nadu players who I grew up, again with that underdog association, given that there's been a history of Tamil Nadu not probably harnessing its entire potential and all that, used to do really well there. And those are the names that you wanted to see. And you got a glimpse of seeing them in action, given that you never had a television access to them playing otherwise, right? Domestic cricket, we didn't have any other chance. Whereas in ICL games, I used to see Satish and Sridhar and I think even
Satish
Kumaran
took a sensational catch.
Yeah, that was something else. Yeah.
So that was like that boundary catch. Yeah.
Yeah, things you've read about on paper about how there's this one guy, he's just there for the fielding. What Jaddu is today and all. Satish used to be, you used to look at the paper score and you used to wonder, what does Satish bring? And you can never get that feeling until you actually witness it once, because you hear it all the time, right? So ICL was a big, definite appetizer for me in that sense. It really set it up. And given that I grew, it was 2006, 2007, that's around the time my English Premier League, my Leeds United fandom is taking a turn that I never thought it would. Like 2004, it gets relegated and you're tested in terms of, how do you support a team that you don't to in terms of television and in media content, etc. So and that's around the same time in India, I think EPL was making a huge impression. It's peaking around that time. So I thought ICL was a fantastic idea. And then when Chennai had its own team, I still remember I used to go and watch all the cricket games in Chepauk in that knowledgeable D stand, as they call it, given that it's the stand that gives tickets only to ex-players or current TNC division players, etc. So I used to use my network and sit there, and that used to be a big myth, right? So when first IPL happened, it was fascinating to see how Chennai was stuck in that. I mean, I went to every single game, at least the first 6-7 seasons. I used to go to every single game. It was first year. What struck to me was I've never seen a division of sorts. First, I remember the Bombay match. Every time Sachin comes up, it's a unwritten rule that you have to lose your shit when Sachin comes up, right? But imagine Sachin coming up and then immediately switching to Vidyut Suramakrishnan, and you'll have to show our local boy his support as well. It's almost like the guy on the production control room switching between these two is actually, messing with our head. That was fascinating from a cultural point of view to witness that. And eventually, I remember that game. I don't know if it's the first or not, but it's that game where Sachin had to get retired, or he went back and then had to come back in, right?
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, that was insane, that match, because when Sachin had to leave also we cheered. And when Sachin came back also we cheered, because we know Sachin said we're not winning. It was like, hey, what are we doing here? But that was fascinating, because you're going through this cultural tug of war between being knowledgeable, which means appreciating every single thing that's cricket about it, and at the same time reacting to this extremely mainstream component of IPL, which is definitely asking you to take sides and make it easy only for your team and not necessarily for the entire bunch of sportsmen in that field. That first year gave me a lot of things, because 5 years later, you go now, it's very clear. There is the maximum knowledgeable facet I see a Chennai crowd today in Chennai Park do is maybe applaud a boundary. To me, that disappoints me, because the IPL crowd is not we can't claim the IPL Chennai crowd to any longer be knowledgeable. Okay, it's not fair. It's like one pitch catch we are appealing. That's when okay, bro, we've gone way past where we're at. So yeah, it's fascinating, man. I thought when we got an IPL team, my first reaction was, I'm so glad this is happening, given that I've always wanted Chennai to have some kind of very fair representation and legit representation in the national scheme of things when it comes to sports or even any form of entertainment that is mainstream, like cinema and cricket are pretty much a staple, right? And I always felt Chennai is underrepresented. So when we got what we got, and especially when we went and got it in around the same time as the Dhoni's rise and all that was excellent, because like I said, at some level, I just need the attention. I wanted my city to get the attention as well. So, and that's how I looked at it. I was like, okay, great. This is going to be a ride that I can't wait to see. Little did I think we'll be this successful, but I was just happy we put ourselves in a position to be heard.
Yeah, that's actually a fine point about the local connection. When you said Vidyut Shivram Krishna, I remembered in looking back, one of the best decisions for the IPL was that rule that they had. You have to pick certain players from that catchment area, like from the local thing. So yeah, talk a bit about that. I mean, because the moment it was a lot like the Ranji team except with all the stars from outside, because you had, I remember as you said, Vidyut, Balaji, Badri, Ashwin, all these, the Chennai connection.
Let me drop an even bigger name, Palani Amarnath.
Amarnath.
Legend.
I think even Ganapati, but I don't know if he played the first season or if he played that
first
match.
Season he did, the third season.
Third season he played one game.
I think only one game he played, right? Yeah. So yeah, all that connection was there. I'm sure there were many others. I'm forgetting. You guys will remember. But
Yo Mahesh.
Yo Mahesh, correct. But Yo Mahesh was in some other team, nah?
He was in Delhi before.
He played for Chennai also. I think year 4, year 5 after that second option, I think he played in Chennai.
Okay. I remember the first year he was there. But yeah, so talk a bit about that connection and how all these players who probably many of them who hadn't had the attention in first division cricket or the local domestic cricket suddenly had, this whole stadium there and actually watching them play.
One of the things that I remember about the early years of was that connection to the Tamil Nadu players and the platform that they were getting. And I went back to actually kind of test my memory to see if, I was remembering the right players at the right time. And you look at the first couple of seasons, it was basically Badri, Balaji, Parni Amarnath, Vidyut. And I think the other factor was Murli as well, who was married to a woman from Chennai or got married to at that time. So, he almost felt like a local player as well in that whole grand scheme of things. And I think where AB Van also mentioned, how in year 3 and year 4 it kind of took on its own beast. That coincided with the arrival of Ashwin and Vijay, and suddenly you had 4 local players in the team every week, and you had Murli on top of that. So really it was 5. And then you had Dhoni and Raina. And I think that kind of helped that image of, all of these guys are Chennai guys. Because, having those local players as a core in the team just helped mesh everyone. And suddenly there was more of the Tamil marketing and, Hayden saying something in Tamil before a match or, Dhoni doing a whistle in an ad and things like that. So I think all of that came together. And also nothing succeeds like success as well. Because in that phase, year 3, year 4, they go on to win back-to-back titles. They win the Champions League T20. So that whole thing all came together, and it almost had a big role in imprinting the Chennai Super Kings as a part of Chennai and making sure that everyone felt that ownership towards the team.
Yeah, and Badri was the crisis man before Dhoni was a crisis man, right?
Badri legend.
Badri was basically like the guy who they floated, right? I mean, sometimes he never even batted, and sometimes he came to consolidate.
He was the 20 for 3 guy. So when your team is in deep shit, I think you call Badri.
Yeah, I was super convinced that it was a deliberate strategy, because every time Badri would come out at 10 for 2, he would like clockwork get out in the 13th or 14th over at like 70 for 2 or something like that, opening the door for like Dhoni and Morkel to walk in. I was almost convinced that he was deliberately doing that, because you could see every game he would do the same thing.
Yeah, but Badri also had, I think, a few games, if I remember right, when he went crazy in the end. Like he actually came up with like some really big hitting towards the end.
Yeah, that's the Delhi Devils. I think in the Ferozshah Kotla, there's a match that he actually cleared in the last over. He had to clear it, and all. Nobody thought he could, and he pulled off all of that. And it wasn't behind. He didn't clear it like in the fast bowler in the scoop shot and thing. He actually went the whole long way across mid wicket. I remember that. But to add to this question, what are we discussing now about what clicked in the local thing? And there's one component I think we haven't discussed here, which is even at in terms of the strategy team behind CSK and at BCCA level. I think it might be wrong, Sibi. You will know this better. Krishnamachari Srikanth was actively behind CSK in the first few years, but he was also involved at the national level, right, around the time.
Yeah,
that was also a big factor, because if you listen to all of Ashwin's interviews and Ashwin, the YouTuber, not the cricketer, I mean, if you go through all of his stuff, you see the kind of, like Ashwin in one interview spoke about how Chika had come and seen him play some first division match right before season 1, and literally went and told him like, hey, keep at this, you'll eventually get in, blah blah blah. And Chika was spearheading CSK strategy then, and did go back and tell them, hey, let's take this kid, and that's how he actually got in one season later. So in fact, that's how, I mean, Chika's influence is evident, given that Anirudh Srikanth also played for CSK, which is one of the best stories to track. I'll do a documentary on that separately. so that time, I think just with Tamil Nadu players getting representation at a format like this, and also Abhinav Mukund and Murali Vijay's famous opening partnership before Murali Vijay got selected for India, a lot of good things were happening around that time for this city per se, with respect to representation, and that bounce just felt really, really nice, given that CSK also ended up getting Vijay and Nayanthara. Yeah, that didn't go well, given that after the second match or something, their contracts were no longer relevant. But I still remember the first match, Vijay did go. Vijay being the superstar of Tamil cinema, for those of you who are unaware, he did go on a entire, like a lap of honor kind of sorts in the innings break, just to wave to the whole stadium. And that was IPL. And the best part was I was in D stand, and all the fans from D stand being the knowledgeable, the whole fanatic, the ultras, you can call it if that way. But Chennai ultras are very soft-natured ultras, so let's not get overboard. Yeah? But look at the kind of stuff they did. When Vijay was doing the lap of honor, and when he was coming in front of our D stand, there were some uncles who had the gall to stand up and actually say, hey, Talada, hey, Talada. Tala is, by the way, his rival Ajit. And he's like, Tala for life, and the whole stand was shouting Tala. I'm like, bro, this is some other level pop culture we're witnessing right now. So this kind of excitement was something else. The same D stand in first season, Joginder Sharma was part of CSK.
Oh, right? yes, CSK, correct.
Oh, you would not believe the kind of slogans that I saw in the D stand, and that immediately ended up spreading around the whole stadium. Joginder Sharma's bowling, just to entertain ourselves, there are people actually starting a song that's saying, Varangala Mugalamechar Joginder Sharma. And hey, Varangala Mugalamechar. When Joginder Sharma is being called for the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, given we have enough and more great options back then, active, functional, not like, right? That tells you people are having a great time. They're enjoying this format like crazy, man. That's
and also that was Joginder Sharma's peak popularity, right? He had bowled the last over in that World T20, and also he and Dhoni, they had that connection always. Dhoni would invariably bring him on when nobody expected him to bowl.
So I think the reason why they did that to Joginder Sharma, at least the CSK fans, I remember, because from a visible point of view, like whatever we were witnessing, there was no conviction for us. Like we couldn't get strength or confidence that this style of military medium is working. I mean, or rather, we can't see what Dhoni is saying, kind of thing. So we might as well have fun around it every time he's playing. So every time the slogan about him was some hyperbole that made it look so ridiculous. We're like, hey, he's one of us. We're going to give him a bad time, but we're going to have a great time about it. You understand? So that's one way. Making a joke out of something that was a definite topic. Like, what is Dhoni seeing in this guy? So we might as well, he's one of our own now. So we might as well troll him and at the same time have a good time. These are all components that I really miss about today's IPL, though. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm going too far ahead, but this is not there. If you go to the matches today, you don't find this at all, man. That's done.
Yeah, we are getting nostalgic about IPL now.
Yes,
that level we have reached now. Brilliant, brilliant.
It's now 13 years, right? Like it's about time to start getting nostalgic about stuff. Also, I think CSK is one of those few. I mean, it was the only franchise at that point in time which didn't go the star-studded way. Like it didn't promote its stars to be the center of focus. It always wanted to put the city and the fans that it supports as the center of focus. So the identity point for CSK is it's a team from Chennai. It's not a team where Dhoni plays, or it's not a team where Raina plays or Hussey plays. Those come second, right? The initial few years, the prevailing thought was this is our team, and the management or the franchise made sure that was the message that came out in all the postings or all the social media outlets that it came to. This is our team. We are playing against the rest of the country. And that's a favorite sentiment for Tamil Nadu itself to have. Like us versus them is a very historic entrenchment in Tamil Nadu. So therefore, they played on that very well, and that kind of endeared the team to us, right? More than sure, Tamil Nadu players playing in the team did help to find us a point of identity. But the team itself, the management itself, came halfway through the fans, and they said, "Hey, see, we are also on your side. We are playing for you." And we will adopt that whistle podu, or we will make people speak in Tamil. We will ask Dhoni with his ridiculous accent, to say something in Tamil, which shows to the people that, hey, this is a team that's willing to come halfway. Let's also go meet them halfway. And that kind of formed a very, very strong bond very early on, before the other franchises caught on to it. I don't think anybody else. I think Kolkata tried Corbo Lorbo, but the initial few seasons that blew them out of water, it was slightly too late for them to catch
and I think one of the things that really worked in Chennai's favor was the fact that historically club cricket has been huge in Chennai, right? I mean, the corporate cricket between the corporate teams is always huge, and the people who were organizing that, Srinivasan, who has been organizing that for dog's years, was also owning Chennai Super Kings. So basically, he knew, and the people around him like Kashi, Vishwanathan, and everyone else knew pretty much how to run a entity, because they had been doing it for a long time. Of course, they had been doing it at the local level, and now that local team they were running was playing at the national level. And I think that point is very important, because of all the teams, at least as far as I noticed in the first season, Chennai required very little marketing, like actual marketing. The organic sort of growth of that team was just insane. It's like you didn't need to do anything. Like people were just talking about Chennai Super Kings, right? Like I'm sure it was that way for when you were living there too.
Yeah, but to extend your point, Sidvi, the proof in the pudding is this: they signed up two of the biggest stars on a contract because every other IPL team was associated with the superstar, right? Akshay Kumar had Delhi, Shah Rukh Khan. With KKR, Shilpa Shetty was there. With Rajasthan and Bangalore also had someone.
Preeti Zinta was there, and of course in Punjab.
Bangalore also had some I forget who Bangalore had, but for sure.
Was it Shivraj Kumar?
No, for sure. I mean, come on, it's Bangalore. They're playing for the superstars who are from Bollywood, not for cricket.
Bollywood.
Are we counting Deepika Padukone?
Yeah, she was an active. Yeah, she was an active.
That was not in season 1 though. I think that was in the middle somewhere.
Right. Not for cricketing reasons. So
yeah. I think at that time she was actually. I think she was probably dating Malya Julian at that time.
Okay,
Malya,
let's say Bangalore had Charu Sharma. Okay, either is point being. Point being there, Chennai actually did go down this route because at that point of time, everyone was kind of punching in the dark, like with respect to what is the potential of this model itself. We didn't know. Like you said, having a cricketing background in terms of the management helped big time in terms of getting your basics right. But what they were not clearly sure about is how do we market ourselves, how do we position, because that's something no way India Cements is going to be the best at, right? And but to extend this argument of how Chennai had an organic growth, the best case you can make for that is the two superstars we signed, and we actually did a lap of honor with after match 1. Match 2, their contracts were removed, cancelled, and they were no longer official brand ambassadors. Nayanthara and
Vijay and
Nayanthara. They had a press conference to announce those people. There is the photos of that press conference, and then 1 week after the match 1, they're out. Multiple reasons, of course. Because the management did not kind of understood what it is to deal with superstars and cinema people and their time, the tantrums and all, and that didn't work out, right? That didn't work out at all, given how much they wanted them to invest in terms of time and buy-in. And B, more than that, they saw the success of the existing campaigns. After match 1, Whistle Podu and all became such a big phenomenon. Whistle Podu, I'm sure we all know it's most created by our friends, the song and all. But I know the people who did the video also. I know that the agency of CSK's, the founders are very close friends of mine. And I hear about the story. The Whistle Podu, the video that went viral. You know how much it cost? This is classic CSK. They spent zero except on the players. They spent zero. In fact, now in the auction, it feels like they're even saving up that auction money also. No, that conservatism is there everywhere. The Whistle Podu videos almost costed them 60,000 rupees. That's it.
Wow.
An amateur. And if you see the quality of that, and if you see the framing and all, it's just basic stuff. The agency had to basically come up with 2 anthems. One was the official one shot by Rajiv Menon, with I think that was G.V. Prakash's music, which is the anthem that is being used as Chennai Super Kings. That's the official one. That's what they spent a bit and all. But for some reason, they felt like, okay, that seems a bit too mainstream, but this is what IPL wants, every team to send their official anthems. And the agency was like, hey, let's just do a proper, a Chennai sounding one, because that sounded more like we will rock you Tamil version, right? So they're like, okay, then let's do Whistle Podu. That's it. The Whistle Podu at 60,000 is done. To date, that video probably is being circulated. It's like, imagine they didn't spend a penny on marketing and they hit jackpot. And I think
the reverse is also true, that Arvind and Jaishankar, who created it, they also didn't make anything out of it in the end, even though it is like an iconic anthem.
So that's CSK, man. That's also a CSK thing. It's about putting very little, maximizing every aspect possible, and just riding that wave. Once they saw that they have an organic brand presence about them, and it coincided with Dhoni in the national team rising together, that was like jackpot. They're like, okay, now we don't need to spend anything. It's just we just keep running on this. It's like that's something to be studied.
And not to make a particular point or anything, but this discussion brought back memories of watching Sivamani walking around the boundary line with his drums and beating. That was an epic part of the first 3 IPLs. I really enjoyed it. And if you went to games at Chepauk as well, he'd do a set 15-20 minutes before every game and get the crowd all pumped up with his beats and all of that. That was a very enjoyable part of those first early seasons.
That's the contrast I'm talking about. Man. That's the contrast I'm talking about. So other teams used to have this glitzy cheerleaders. Chennai used to have cheerleaders who are fully clothed and Sivamani on the drums. So,
and the best part is, I went to, I think 3 years ago when Chennai got back after the ban and all, in the first match, I wanted to actually watch Chennai play RCB in Bangalore, okay? It's something I've always wanted to, because the hate is real. I've heard so much. I see it on social media. I wanted to see what is it in the ground. And the best part is I went there and I got pavilion seats, right? And there is a Bangalore equivalent of Shivamani, and he's pathetic. Okay? and the kind of beats he's trying to drum up there is stuff that we used to do with Pepsi 500 ml plastic water bottles in 2004 Test match and all. He used to take that and hit the chair in front of us doing ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. I'm like, bro, we can do this. And Chennai, we have Sivamani coming up with complex beats, and here is this guy with some colored hair, and, looking like Singaravel and Kamal, and just doing basic steps. I'm like, this is pathetic, Bangalore. We finished this 10 years ago. You guys are still, you're just copying Sivamani.
Dude, when you pick a test team, you have to be a little more conservative, right? So... I mean, but let's see this Whistle Podu. That Whistle Podu is actually a topic I want, like an interesting thing, because number one, that beat is just it's infectious, right? It gets, and it's much more than just a cricket anthem. It's a city anthem. It captures so much of the city. It captures that vibe of the Chennai, the local, the songs that you'll probably hear when you're, just walking down the street, the beat that you'll hear more than the songs. And also Whistle Podu is a very interesting construction itself, because I mean, I've not lived too much in Chennai, but I would normally expect a person living in Chennai to say whistle Adi.
Correct. That video brought the whole city together, because if you look at that video, it had people across all cadres, all ages, all classes, just coming on the roads, and they're just going to random people and just asking them to do that step. And that's such a catchy step as well, right? In fact, whistle podu does not even come in the song, if I remember it right. Correct me if I'm wrong, because whistle adinga, you're right, Sidvi, in what you're saying. But whistle podu, I think, was given the name because it helps for the rest of the non-Tamilian CSK fans too, because apdi podu. No, that's what they're all familiar with. So, song podu whistle adingana puriyadhu avangalukku. They won't understand that, right? So, whistle podu அப்படினா okay, Dhonikum pronounce பண்ண வரும்னு வெச்சிருப்பாங்க.
Yeah, which brings us to, of course, the critical point about CSK and that early year, because it has been documented in the Bharat Sundaresan has documented in the book how VB Chandrasekhar basically said that we don't care, we need Dhoni. And he was also a national selector around that time. So he obviously saw the talent there. Dhoni was like still pretty young. I mean, he had made his debut, he had won a World T20 and all, but still like to bank on him to basically be like, the guy for your team when you had all these other guys going around as well. That was masterstroke number 0, masterstroke number 1 and masterstroke number 2.
Yeah. So the year one when Chennai said they wanted Dhoni, at that point in time, like in 2008, it looks like, okay, we are going up after the most shiniest thing, the most recent captain, the most World Cup winning captain. So it didn't look like that masterstroke of a move, because I was more impressed with Deccan Chargers, the way they were constructing teams. Andrew Simons, Shahid Afridi, Adam Gilchrist, like they were bringing on all beasts of all kind to make a T20 team. I was like,
not to forget Rohit Sharma.
Oh, Rohit Sharma. Yes. But at that time, Rohit Sharma was Rohit Sharma, right? Like he was just a talented guy. He was just a talented guy.
No Hit Sharma, I think, was the nickname at the time.
So I was more enamored with the Deccan Chargers team. I thought that they were the glitchiest, glamorous team from a cricketing point of view. And having Dhoni and solid players like Matthew Hayden and bunch of few Tamil players, I always felt like, okay, we are not taking this very seriously. We are just trying to form a team and make a win. But let's see if it goes well or not. I did not expect that Dhoni will become such a cultural phenomenon in Tamil Nadu. I don't think even Dhoni expected this.
Just to add one small point, it's like Dhoni grew with CSK, right? I mean, 2008 to now, I mean, basically CSK has seen everything of him through that time. I mean, they've seen highs, lows. They've seen the team banned. So 2 years he went and played for another team. That also they supported because he was playing there. I mean, it's almost been like a journey with Dhoni for many of the fans.
And I think that whole period was the peak of Dhoni as a captain, as a player, if you think about it, because 2007, he wins the T20 World Cup. Then there's the IPL for a few years with the Chennai Super Kings. They win the IPL twice in a row, win the Champions League, and then they go on to win the 2011 World Cup. And in that whole period of time, Dhoni really establishes himself as the finisher in world cricket in partnership with Yuvraj Singh, where they're just finishing off chase after chase. So I think that whole period turned into a golden age for Dhoni, and that kind of rubbed off onto CSK as well. And I think on a couple of things, I think CSK were a little ahead of the curve, having a player like Albie Mokkel, for example, who would come in and, just look to hit every ball to the boundary as soon as possible. And, that using the conditions, using the spinners on the home turf, using Ashwin, using Murli, to choke the runs as much as possible. I think in that sense, I think all of that was led by Dhoni and a little bit by Stephen Fleming as well, once he joined the coaching staff as well, replacing Kepler Wessels. So I think there was a lot of development, like you said, for Dhoni with CSK. But I think it was kind of like a symbiotic relationship where CSK grew because of that development and Dhoni grew because of CSK as well.
Yeah, the story is that I'm sure some of you would have seen this, that VB Chandrasekhar goes on record saying N. Srinivasan actually wanted Viru, right? But got Dhoni. So that tells me something, because that always fascinates me about how you preferred somebody else and therefore had very little context on Dhoni, and BB had to make that pitch to say, hey, here's why we should go. And then the guy you get, actually in terms of a blueprint, in terms of what, say, N. Srinivasan and his team, core team, wanted to deploy for this organization, aligned exactly with Dhoni's values also in terms of his stability, and certain things are non-negotiables in CSK. Like from season 1 to now, if you look, for example, in season 1, we got Hussey and Hayden. They were actually past it technically. They're not the glam players who were in the peak of their powers back then. They were almost today when you look at it, we're getting a Watson. When we got a Watson a couple of years ago, it shouldn't surprise you. This has been our model. Like Tejas just said, there are certain things where there are certain non-negotiables that we need proven veterans of international standards who can come and adapt with little time. And then we also then go for specialist roles, like an Albie Morkel is something we've always gone for. Douglas Bollinger out of nowhere. We go and get these specialists knowing that, hey, it need not, it's forget of what how the papers will write about it. They have their own guidelines, and it's fascinating how the leadership and Dhoni could almost get in, given that it's not like they were scouting Dhoni as well, being aware of the fact that he thinks like us, he has a rhythm to his thought process that aligns with us. Because that's the catch, like which player has stuck with one franchise for this long? You really need the rhythms to match of both these verticals, right? And that's fascinating how that's happened, because that's just pure magic, man. That's the beautiful thing about sport in this case.
So the continuity that SA mentioned is such a big factor with CSK, because if you look at the staff, it's easy to just say Dhoni and Raina have been there all the way. But if you look at the backroom staff, you've got Kashi Vishwanath, who's been there all through the journey. You've got Stephen Fleming, who was a player in year 1 and then became a coach and stayed on. You have Hussey, who's still a batting coach. You have the same fielding coach for many, many years. The continuity is not just on the field. It's also in that back room and the team culture and all of that. So I think that's also played a huge role.
As much as Dhoni is a force for CSK, I also think that Fleming has also been an equally important force for CSK. And the first season he played as a player, but they were quick to realize that he might not be playing for a long time, and therefore he quickly transitioned into that coach role, and he stayed there for a long time, and he's been a major part of the think tank, right? Like he's had a great say in the people that CSK buy and all that. So he has also been one of the driving forces for CSK. So a lot of pieces fell together very, very early for CSK, and that was a lucky, you can call it serendipity or whatever, but in that way, CSK were very, very lucky.
I think in many ways, Fleming owes us this many years of coaching and service, just because he made us watch him and Vidyut Sivaramakrishnan open the batting for season 1 of IPL, which was the most difficult thing to process. 2 left-handers, laborious left-handers. It's like, yoppa. It was very bad, man.
I think Parthiv Patel also was part of that, no?
Elbow guard. What do you call this? Arm guard. I've never seen people wear that in IPL. Like, bro, we're not playing test match. Relax.
Yeah, Parthiv Patel was also part of it, and Anirudh Srikanth also, I think, had a little bit of a cameo here and there. Yeah,
he came in season 1. He came later. Season 3, season 4.
When Chika became more. Come on, CSK. Yeah, he came then. Yeah. So, but Fleming, I was just reading his interview recently after I think it was after the KKR match. The man is talking about how other than these 2-3 months of pressure, the rest of the time he's looking at upskilling at all points of time. He takes up two more gigs outside of this, and his point is, around media analyst or something, something about the analytics of the game, going into diving deep. He spoke about upskilling, and he still talks in that interview. He basically said, "I'm looking to keep myself evolving as a coach. There's so much for me to learn, etc." And I'm like, bro, you've done more than 10 years in this. And you're one of the most successful coaches, and you have the biggest names out there vouching for you and who clearly acknowledge what you bring to the table. And for him yet to have that hunger and go out there in press conferences and speak about this tells you that that's a great catch. Imagine having someone with this kind of an ambition and a rootedness to continuously stay in one place and do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think recently there was a photo, right, of the people who had stayed on in CSK from 2008. And in fact, one of them was Lakshmi, Lakshmi Narayan, the data analyst. So it shows that you have your captain, your coach, and your data analyst in your team for so long. Obviously, there is going to be some sync there, right? They have seen situations, they have seen players, they know, they've also built this identity so well that they know exactly how they can, the 5 other options they will have in a particular situation. So I think no other team has that. It's not just, what you have on the computer, right? It's also what you have in the experience and in your lived experience and in your match situations. And Dhoni, of course, is the perfect captain for knowing, like having that gut feel for the game. So the gelling was just too good to be true.
Yeah, and this all has to be taken in the context of IPL, right? Which has auctions every year and major auctions every 3 years. So your churn rate is like crazy, and because of the competitive nature of IPL and because of every star in the cricket universe playing it, so A, there's going to be always jostle for spaces, and B, there's always going to be this ego clashes, right? People not getting along with people wanting to move to other teams and stuff like that. We have primarily avoided almost all of that, and we have stayed as a cohesive unit for like 13 years now. I mean, 13 years now. So that is an achievement that never gets to be spoken, because those are the reasons why CSK, forget the on-field successfulness, but as a team, as a cohesive unit, we make sense all the time, and therefore there is a narrative for fans to follow. Okay, this has been the team, this has been the structure from the beginning, and therefore we can identify this structure and we can identify ourselves as fans to this structure. And that is, also a primary reason why a lot of CSK fans are like hardcore.
And it's also like, number one, because you have been watching the team for so long, there are some teams where you develop a kind of an affinity so much for them that you begin to almost sense what is coming, right? Like there was a time I remember in the early years when invariably around the 12th or 13th over, Dhoni would come in. He would not come in before, he would not come in after. It was, if the wicket fell in the 8th over, 9th over, he would send somebody else. If the wicket didn't fall, then he would promote himself. So those kind of things, almost fans, you sort of start picking up towards the end. And then I remember, I have a friend who's an extremely close CSK fan. And even like back in 2008, 2009, he started developing this thing of, 12 and over in the last 3, we'll get it. And that level of confidence was like just insane. It's like, back then getting 12 and over in IPL, it's not like now when Hardik Pandya and Russell and all are coming and getting that. It was still a big deal back then to get 12 and over in the last 5.
I remember Albion Markle and I think Dwayne Bravo getting 70 in the last 5.5 overs. So that was madness.
And that was a huge deal.
Yeah, that was madness. And they were the prototype hitters for a lot of IPL hitters today.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that the moment you develop that kind of a relationship with the team, where you begin to not only sense what they're doing, but you begin to develop a confidence that they will win. And then when they win, that develops the kind of fandom that is quite magical, right?
I think that stems from Dhoni's leadership. I almost feel like this goes unnoticed a lot. It's not just that he was leading the team and the organization well. He also is leading the fans so well, man. Like that's something I don't think we realize. How often have we all sat here in the last 13, 12 years and sat here completely disagreeing with Dhoni? Probably the last few years, maybe. Okay. But imagine the first 8, 9 years of the journey. He has instilled that confidence in us that man knows what he's doing, and it's not something it's not like our parents, we go and ask, why is this happening? They don't know, God will take care. No, nothing ambiguous about this, bro. It's very explicit what is out there, and it's not like he sits and details it out to all of us he has his own media interactions. He does it in the very few times we get to hear him speak, but it's so clear, it's so consistent. The coherence is what is there throughout this organization, which is something Robin Uthappa recently in an interview spoke about, how at 35 he's so excited to join as CSK. At 35. And he's saying, and they ask him why, and he's like, hey, this is one of the few organizations where I can just come and I'm not insecure about anything here. And these are all familiar faces I've known. Raidu was his captain in India under 17. Raina and him go back a long way. And I think he made his debut on the Dhoni.
And he played in that 2007 World T20 also, Indian victory. Yeah.
So his point is he says every single player who's not played for CSK knows, and it's an open secret that when you get here, the stability and the family environment, the process that the back end has put, it's all something that you want to come, because 2-3 months of stress the best way to address the stress is by such support systems, right? And this goes so unnoticed. That's something we saw when we got back in after the ban. We saw how we hit the ground running. How can you hit the ground running like that with a budgie, Harbhajan coming in so late, like, all those kind of things happening? It just happens only if the framework is so strong, and the framework can't be something that a captain has nothing to do with. He's literally orchestrating the whole ecosystem on his own. That's something Dhoni has the bandwidth to do, the capacity to do. It goes unnoticed. As fans, except for last season, I don't ever remember fans being very confused or divided in terms of opinions towards Dhoni's decision making or the organization's decision making. Only last season it was like Piyush Chawla, Shane Watson still. Even there, you can give him some benefit of the doubt, saying, "Okay, the Middle East, we never planned for these conditions, etc."
Yeah.
Right.
I think the belief that you spoke about, that Chennai can win from any position, it stems from Dhoni's own captaincy and his own belief in being able to pull off a game, right? So if you look at everything that Dhoni does in a limited over situation, it is always geared towards staying in the game till as late as possible, till that last ball where you can steal the game and get the win. Like, it doesn't matter, if you need 10 runs in over. If you can get that to 16 of the last over, we'll win from there. If you need, you just need to stay in the game. And you look at Dhoni's tactics, how you look at how he uses the Chennai conditions. He used to use it with Ashwin and Murli. Just slow down the pace of the game, slow down the scoring, just stay in the game when you're defending 140. And then you take 2 wickets suddenly in the 16th over and the game is over. So Dhoni's captaincy style itself was that let's take it deep and keep the belief, and he project that feeling of calm to the players, and that kind of rubbed off on the fans as well, where you've seen it so many times that you just end up believing that he'll just keep doing it game after game anyway.
I just want to point out though, because now that you've gone overboard praising this, I wonder if not for the success. Yeah. Not for the success. Of course, as a Leeds United fan, I wonder if how many of them would have actually stuck through, say, 13 years of Chennai Super Kings not, say, winning a single title. Because the process is still true. Imagine you can still have the same process. You can have a calm captain. You can have a consistent back end. You can have local players being represented. You can have all those emotional things that are binding us together, and you can still have this feeling of, oh my God, this city needs some success, man. There are so many stories. Like RCB is, if not for the glamorous part of it, RCB is a great story of there's cricketing history. It's a great city. There's a lack of success, right? You can root for them if not for so many unrootable things about them. So my point being, success probably is also helped big time in terms of making us Chennai fans look a lot more loyal than we are, I would say.
But absolutely, I would counter that saying that if you pick Dhoni and you don't win IPL for 13 years, there's something wrong there, man.
hey, come on, man. You can pick Gale and AB de Villiers and not win IPL, okay? So
and Virat Kohli, yeah.
and have them all play in one team, like, and still lose the 2016.
But let me come to the defense of my city. Still, packed house will be chanting RCB. Doesn't matter what happens, okay? So that is still there.
Wasn't there one Ranji match where Saurashtra were playing and people are chanting RCB?
Pujara. Brother, let me come to defense of your city again. But the match I saw CSK play RCB in Chinnaswamy Stadium, you will do RCB. But when the fans started doing it, when the CSK fans in the stadium started doing CSK as a counter to that, you were doing, not proactively taking up anything. So please, there's a big difference.
Hey, we are always chasers, macha. We don't put up totals. We chase.
Since we are bantering about RCB, I just wanted to bring up a couple of my favorite moments, CSK versus RCB. One was the Jadeja slapping the ball straight to third man and Kohli celebrating, and then it turns out it's a no ball. That was one
best
of the greatest moments. That one. And then the second one in my memory is Morkel smashing the hell out of Virat Kohli for 28 runs in 1 over. That was epic.
Yeah. That was coming. That everyone knew was coming, man. Virat Kohli and all.
No, that was just bad captaincy. He thought he could hide till the 18th, 19th over. He's like, you think we don't know Max? We are CSK, bro. We all know there's 1 over of one Bakra there somewhere. It's a question of you deciding who that Bakras. Then Virat's like, give me the ball. Oh, you want the whole Chennai crowd after the match was chanting, thank you, Kohli. Thank you, Kohli. He was so bad. It was damn good that over.
Okay, but tell me this: how much ever you guys understood Dhoni's tactics, you understood like you're taking it deep, you understood this. Dharamshala would have been a shock even for you guys, right? Like that victory.
Of course.
30 runs in the last 2 overs. Come on, man.
I think the shock of that was Dhoni's reaction after winning the game. Like, you never see Dhoni celebrating or like doing anything, and he was there punching his glove on his helmet and all of that. That was the surprising part. I don't think the win was as surprising as that was.
That was a terrible season for us, actually, right? Like, we lost heavily in the first half, and we had to qualify in that match, and that probably why. Maybe I was hoping that 2020 would be a repeat of that season, but not to be. But that was actually a very terrible season for us.
I wouldn't say I was too shocked because before that, the lead-in, we were picking up form and winning really close matches. Yeah. So it was not like a one-off match that he showed up. It was something you could see that suddenly the team felt like, okay, we need to pull ourselves together, and some siege mentality thing happened, saying we can't go out this way. So in that sense, you could see it's like one of those seasons where one team just got together and could pull off. The biggest shock that, as Tejas just mentioned, was it's not just a whole of Chennai feeling shocked that what Dhoni can abuse. He uses bad words. Even my father felt the same way about me, because when that shot happened, even I was abused in front of the whole family, right? Because that time you're watching it in the living room, and then when Dhoni's doing it, you're standing up and giving the best abuse of Tamil words, and your dad's looking at you and Dhoni like, you two abuse? You use all these words? Dhoni's punching him, saying "Mother" in slow motion.
Yeah. That was especially because he had built this whole the aura of the cool cat, even 2011 World Cup, it was, this happened in 2010, of course, we hadn't seen 2011, but even 2007, so many times when he had that cool cat image, and then suddenly he wins the game. I think he was probably even injured in that game, I don't know, maybe. But yeah, there was a pumped up feeling about him after that. So which actually brings me to, another crucial component of CSK, which is also part of their identity, and it plays a huge part in how they play, is Chepauk, is the pitch, is the kind of pitch they have traditionally loved to play on in Chepauk, which is like pretty much just neutralize everyone who comes here, just forget all these guys, like these big hitters and all, you just pick these 3 spinners. Of course, they've had some really good spinners playing for them, and Dhoni's captaincy, who he knows how to captain on that Chepauk pitch. That's like a huge deal. I don't think any other franchise has had that consistency with the conditions as much as CSK has had, which is why when they went to UAE last season, it was a pretty much a tricky one for them, because they probably picked a team for Chepauk.
I think Bombay picks a team for Wankhede. As much as I hate them from a sporting point of view and all that, but surely you can give Bombay the same credit of understanding the conditions and taking the bullies.
I think Bombay picks a team for, largely almost all conditions. But I think CSK is particularly tailor-made for their conditions.
I think that comes from Dhoni being Dhoni preferring spin to almost anything else, right? So he knows how to control the game with spinners, and lucky for him that Chepauk pitch is a very spin conducive and slightly slower wicket, so that helped him a lot. That played into his game plans a lot. If left to him, he would have bowled 20 overs of spin, but unfortunately batsmen tend to whack spinners in the end, so he needs at least 1 or 2 pacers to cover up like 4 or 5 overs. Otherwise, he is very, very happy to bowl 14, 15 overs of spin if left to him. And even in the recent match, he says that in the last when Kolkata went, completely crazy chasing the 220 target, he says that the last few overs came down to the pacer and the batsman.
Yeah.
Because he thinks that if it comes down to a pacer and a batsman, it's up to the batsman to, terrorize the paceman. So, but with spinners, he has slightly some edge in the game because it happens in the middle part of the game. And Dhoni kind of thinks that he can slip the spinner in and get the target to around like 14, 15 runs an over and make it difficult for them. So his whole game plan is, how easy can I make it for the pacer coming at over 16 to 20? And for that, the principal tools that he needs is like premium spin bowlers.
And I think one of the things your previous guest, Hassan Chima, mentioned with respect to Dhoni is how he controls the pace of the game. And I think the spinners are a I think the spinners are a big part of that, because he'll get, when CSK are on top, suddenly you'll see Jadeja and Raina come and run through overs in like 1 minute, 30 seconds and all of that. And suddenly before the other team realizes they're way behind the game. So I think that's part of the thing. I think Chennai have used that advantage of the ground conditions being consistent much better than most other teams. I think Mumbai is probably in recent times, like SA mentioned, an exception. I think other teams have had the opportunity to do it. Like Bangalore should by no, Chinnaswamy is always going to be a national highway. It's a tiny ground. There is a certain way you should set that team up, but they've never found that success in actually setting up the team in the right way. So I think that's a credit to Chennai that they've been able to form a team, form a strategy that works in their home environment so well.
Yeah, and also I think Ashoka brought up, he was telling us in the chat about how after the KKR game, Dhoni also said that you don't want the big hitters to come in too early. So you don't want wickets early on. So that is also...
He's probably the only captain who will say you don't want to pick too many wickets up front. Like Virat Kohli will commit suicide before saying anything of that sort. He would want 10 wickets in the first 10 balls. Dhoni is like, no, don't bring Russell and Karthik before over 7. Let them come at like over 16 or 15. Let them think that they are doing the job. Meanwhile, I'll just win the game by 3 or 4 runs and I'll take the 2 points.
I think we can do a separate entertaining podcast of us sledging Virat Kohli for half an hour.
It's not a sledge. What I'm saying is that it takes a very bizarre brain to come up and say hey, I don't want to pick too many early wickets, because the way he has a very, very different understanding of T20 than, like, these days everybody has an understanding of T20 and everyone either has gut feel understanding or stat based understanding. I think Dhoni's is apart from all of those. I don't think he thinks he has a method in which he says it all comes down to the last 4 or 5 overs. Screw what happened in the first 35 overs. It comes down to one batsman and one bowler. Field settings are irrelevant because the batsman can clear anything. And it all depends on how good that bowler is and how good that batsman is. And if that is the simple formula that he's following, unfortunately, this understanding comes at a time when he's not the batsman that he's used to be. Like, even if you see 2018-19, he was very good. I don't think that has translated well in the last 2 years. And that guarantee has gone off for him. So now he has to unfortunately depend on other people to finish games for him. And that is the challenge for him going forward as well.
Yeah, which actually brings me to, one of the IPL greats in terms of batsmen and who has been like so integral to CSK for all these years, Suresh Raina. He's like, of course, there's you spoke about the solidity at the top, right? And you've had this history of having all these, solid, dependable veterans at the top. And then you have Dhoni at the finish, and sometimes Albie Markel, sometimes some other players. But this Raina's presence in the middle has been such a crucial factor because of the gears that he can play in. He can play in any gear that you want, and he can score like 90 of 20 balls, or he can score or he can play that anchoring role, right? That's like so important.
Raina has been the most important batsman in the Chennai lineup for the last 13 years, or excluding that 2-year break that they had.
Excluding the balcony fiasco.
Yeah, excluding that as well. He scored 5,500 runs, which is basically second only to Virat Kohli by 500, 700 runs. His strike rate is 139, which is ahead of by quite a distance of Kohli and Rohit Sharma again. So he's been a consistent performer. Like you said, he's played a variety of innings like that 87 where he just went nuts against Punjab for 6 overs. If you look at the strike rates in Chennai, just to give context as well, he's 5th all-time in terms of the highest strike rate. And the only guys ahead of him are Pawan Negi, who scored like some 100-something runs, Moeen Ali, Sam Curran, and Albie Markel. Those are the only guys who have had a strike rate higher than Raina. And given the volume of runs that he scored and the strike rate, that's just an impressive career to have in any T20 tournament. So it's just hats off to Raina. He's just one of the best batsmen in the format.
I think I really appreciate, of course, goes without saying, the batting prowess, but there's this vibrancy. There's this effervescence he brings about. No, there's really young quality. Especially, we still associate him with being some young. He looks that way also. We still think he's some kid trying to replace Mohammad Kaif in the Indian cricket team, right? Like those years are way behind us. But that's how I still look at that Amul baby face. But I really like the spirit he brings and how it translates in this team. And that really, I think for a calm guy like Dhoni, he needs a Robin like this, right? Mm-hmm. Someone who will actually be the person, like the glue for every single for the dressing room, the one that plays the songs, or the one that goes and pinches the cheeks of everyone who's done well, whereas they're waiting for Dhoni's validation. He's playing bad cop, bro. He's not coming your side. This is a fascinating combination to look at from day one. And Raina's enjoyed Dhoni this way. He respects Dhoni that when it's not like he wants to. He's never ever put himself out there saying, what I bring to this team. I've never ever heard Raina ever singling out in 13 years of this kind of a situation. It's amazing how he's been able to work with the whole setup and add so many intangibles that brings that I really think helps this, makes this a fun place for players to come and join. I mean, what a fielder, especially in the first 8 years. Okay, now to see him with the tummy and the headband and all, I'm like, okay, I need to go back to YouTube and go through some old stuff. What a fielder! Because Raina standards and Hussey standards in the first few seasons is what made Badrinath and Vijay actually step up. It's not like on their own, there were some fantastic fielders. They were your typical domestic fielders who were like, on and off inconsistent. But when you see a Michael Hussey putting himself like how he does at 35, 36, that's when you see a Badri and Vijay, and they speak about these things, really want to step up and say, okay, we need to make fielding a big difference. And that's what was a big difference maker in the first few seasons. Our fielding was excellent.
Yeah, fielding, and Raina gives you 2 or 3 overs. Younger Raina used to come in and be the 6th bowler if you want to. Therefore, you can extend your batting lineup.
Yeah, and Tejas brought up that 87 of 25 balls. I mean, what the hell was that? How does anyone score 87 and 25
and
balls?
How do you
lose from there?
What the hell?
I think we should just invite one Mr. Brendan McCullum to come and take this question, and I want him to address the whole of Tamil Nadu, if possible, because it was his pathetic judgment there that led to probably the biggest, the greatest comeback. There would have been something else. It was insane. I remember almost breaking the TV with every boundary because he made the impossible possible, and to get out that way was just so unfortunate. How it's like almost the whole team believed that if Raina plays, we're winning, and it's almost like, hey, but he's done enough. You guys can take over from here. No. We only want Raina to do.
And that season, I think CSK had no answers to Kings 11 Punjab, man. Like Maxwell killed us in the league stages. I mean, he destroyed Ashwin. So, and the one time we get him cheaply, I mean, Seva comes and hits a century. So we had no answers. Raina had to save us there, and we might have probably won it if not for that dismissal and subsequent blading by the lower order batsman. But yeah, that was a phenomenal innings actually.
I mean, it could have been a sub 30 ball 100, man. I mean, it's like just to think of it. Had he been there for another 4 more balls, he could have got 100.
Yeah.
Freaks. Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, but of course, what happened after that was equally crazy. I mean, I don't understand how that didn't end up in a victory. But yeah, that is the way it goes. So one thing though with Chennai, I mean, we brought up all the names, but there's been that Aussie connection throughout, right? Hayden, Hussey, Bollinger, Watson. Dirk Nannes. Forgot about him.
Ben Hilfenhaus.
George Bailey.
Bailey. So
Andy
many people.
Bickle.
Bowling coach, yeah.
Andy Bickle, okay.
He went back.
I'm pretty sure Ben Laughlin was there for a bit also.
He was, yeah.
Wow, yeah. I mean, it's but of all the people, I mean, Arvind brought it up also. The Bollinger was like out of the blue, right? I mean, he just came and like he just won them like a few games and like, okay, that's like
he won the IPL. He won the IPL, not a few, because until then that season we did not know how to close the games. We didn't have a finisher from the bowling department. And he was the perfect, that's when Dhoni, I think he pretty much cemented the idea that Dhoni had on why he needs a left armer. because that became a template since then. Ashish Nehra pretty much came and filled the same void. We signed a Ben Hilfinost because he swings the other way comfortably, which is what a left-armer does on his own. That was a fascinating season out of nowhere for Bollinger to come and be that guy who will come and bowl at 100 miles per hour. I mean, not the speed, but the body language will be like that, you know? You're like, bro. But we loved that energy about him. We had a childlike energy again, and that catch. I was at the other end. Remember that unbelievable catch at long on in front of the Pavilion Terrace? I was at the opposite end. Nobody in the stadium knew what was happening because that was the first time in IPL where we saw a player do that. After that, it was the norm. I'm very sure of this feeling. I think it's 2010 now. This is the year we went to Bombay. It's our first year that we won. Bollinger will catch it and then get to the boundary, throw it up, get back in, and catch it again. You remember that the security guy, there's a slow motion shot of the security and the ground staff behind him getting excited. And then like, no, don't drop it. No, come back inside. They're literally telling him what to do. They're like, bro, he knows what he's doing. Chill.
And he became a cult hero, right, in Chennai. I mean, Bollinger became like so well known. Like random people with no cricket background telling me about Doug Bollinger. And I'm like, hey, where have you heard about this fellow?
It helps.
Bollinger, I can tell you with authority that he's not that big in Australia as he is in Chennai.
Well, it helps that he danced beautifully, put some nice kuttu and all after we won in Jepa and Shivamani and Bravo. So the guy was a proper, people's person. Like very, very accessible.
I think the Australia phenomenon is really IPL wide, right? I mean, we've seen so many varieties of Australian players who played in the IPL, from the established Pontings and Gilchrist to the guys making a name through the IPL like Sean Marsh, and then guys who just disappeared like Luke Pommersback and all of that. So there's just a variety of Australians who've been part of it. I think the only difference that I see is that in Chennai, they've kind of managed, I think, as part of the team culture and idea, to connect with the fans in a way that, no one else seems to have been able to do in other places, with some exceptions, maybe like De Villiers in Bangalore or things like that. That identity of knowing that guy is from CSK. I think that is a very difficult thing that a lot of international players have not been able to do. But in Chennai, it seems to be a consistent trend year on year.
I mean, even Shane Watson, man, playing with blood. Really, that's like, as it is, we are sentimental down here in South India. In the finals, to see him blood stains and all in his pant, and then him coming and giving an Insta story about it. Like, this is just meant to be. Like, there's something about this organization.
And Shane Watson had played for so many teams. It's not, but he came to Chennai and it's almost like it became like his team. Like he became associated with Chennai. And even now, I'm sure many people, when they think of Shane Watson in IPL, they think of Chennai. They don't think of Rajasthan in 2008. I mean, the three people will be there who will think of that. But I'm saying most people will think of Chennai.
And
even Shane Watson.
That speaks
even Shane Watson.
And even that speaks of Shane Watson himself, right? Like when he's been given that rope to fail and then he comes and succeeds. Maybe that's something that I think he lacked most of his career, the backing of people. So his career was always A, injury prone, and B, stop-starty, right? So he finally found a team which trusts in him and says, okay, go on, fail as much as you want. We know you will come good. And I think he surprised himself more than others that he came good on when it really, really mattered.
The funniest part about that Watson piece is that when he came to Chennai, he was already an IPL legend. Like if you've played enough fantasy cricket, you knew that you could not make a team without Watson because Watson would score, take wickets. And when he came to Chennai, he was almost, just a batsman at that stage. And he still made such a big impact.
Oh, also Shane Watson, of course, another player who RCB had and had no idea how to use. And
that is a very, very long list, Sidhu.
That culture is now continuing with Moeen Ali. It's like every RCB fan must be thinking, Moeen Ali is a batsman. I thought he's an off spinner.
In the early years, I think it was Delhi who started off with the trend, and slowly RCB, once RCB had T20 players, they started following that Delhi trend.
Yeah. RCB, like you give them the greatest player also, they will find a way to somehow mess up. Yeah, this is a long tradition. Don't worry. Zero IPL titles to show for it, of course. But by the way, unbeaten this season, so don't underestimate.
It's okay. Tomorrow Chennai RCB.
Okay, this episode will come much later, so by that time we'll know the result and all. But okay, let us not talk about RCB now. This is the last thing I wanted to talk about in this podcast. So the Bollinger, Aussie is interesting, but I want to bring up a point about all the, given the switches that have happened, like Ashwin played for CSK, then he went to play for many teams. How is it like in terms of the loyalty factor when a CSK player goes to another team and then comes back, or a Tamil Nadu, a player from Chennai, who you have associated with Chennai, then goes and plays for some other team. Talk a bit about that kind of, is there any conflict or it's just black and white?
There is only conflict. There is only conflict when that player is from Chennai, or he plays for Tamil Nadu, like Ashwin, Dinesh Karthik, Washington Sundar. There's a general interest in seeing how these players are performing in other teams. So that, to that extent, and when they perform well against CSK, there is this slight irritation also. Other than that, there are people who come and go. So there is not much of a strong association, because Chennai mostly retains the key players that they have for a very, very long time. And the people who they let go either after a season or two, and there's not much of a connect there. Only a few people from Tamil Nadu who move to other teams. We're kind of slightly sad when they are let go, and when they play against us, there's a massive irritability. Like when Dinesh Karthik or Ashwin play well against CSK, we are like, what the hell, dude? They should be playing for us. Why the hell are they playing against us? So that's the kind of sentiment there.
I think the last big auction, the thing that I was disappointed was not so much the age of the players, which everyone was focusing on, but it was very disappointing to see the lack of that Tamil Nadu players, that presence in the lineup. Because if you look around the IPL, you look at the Syed Mushtaq Ali starting there. Tamil Nadu now they've won the trophy again for the second time, I think, in the last 10 years or so. They have a tradition of having a lot of strong T20 players in and around the squad. You've got guys like Shah Rukh Khan showing up, who's finishing off innings for Punjab. So there is that talent. It's not like the talent's not there. On our bench, we have Sai Kishore sitting there, who has a career T20 economy rate of 5.3 but can't get a game because we have Jadeja, Moeen Ali and all these guys. So I think that was the biggest thing for me. And I think, look, to your point, I think we've seen Ashwin grow from the CSK ranks to be, an all-time legend in Test cricket and all of these things. And I think that connection will always be there with some of those players. I think it's very hard to separate the CSK thing. And you look at the memes that came out when Ashwin bunkered Butler. There was a lot of support for Ashwin in that scenario from Chennai as well, because he's always going to be our guy. It doesn't matter if he's playing for CSK or not. People like Ashwin are Chennai guys. That's all. For life. What
they just brought up is something I have felt strongly, and the disconnect has happened in the last, I'll say, 5 years. Every time someone leaves, it comes down to context. If someone who's from Chennai or who's Tamil and he leaves CSK and he's a really good player, but as long as the rationale is fine, I think CSK fans have been reasonable in understanding it. Like Ashwin, we couldn't retain beyond a point. That's fine. Badrinath and Vijay had to go. They were past it. So there was no question of all of that. But what is the succession plan though? The last 3 years, especially given the uncertainty about, none of us are aware of, are we picking a team for a year? Because every year it's always a case of there's going to be a big auction again, we're all going to go back, blah, blah, blah. The last 3-4 years, the lack of local representation, I mean, that's actually what we spoke at length 1 hour ago, right? Which is how the Palani Amarnaths and the Vidyut Siramakrishnan and the Ganapatis and the Badris, the young Badris and the young Vijays, where are those next one, the succession plan? Because you do have them around. You see the Murugan Ashwins and you see the Shah Rukh Khans and you see the Natarajans, you see enough and more. TNPL has become big. But yeah, this year they've kind of gone behind that, and the Harishankar and Jagadish and Sai Kishore are pushed a lot more. But that component of it is also not addressed enough by a Dhoni or by the management in the last post-ban, since we've come back. Because post-ban, for example, the first year, when you get a budgie and all of that, it was very evident. We have to come back and the legacy has to be stamped back again. So even then we could kind of let it go that, okay, there is not much of a representation from a Tamil point of view, the youngsters and all that. And then to next year was really bad to see, I mean, it's okay, we lost in the finals, but there's just no representation. That was a bummer for me, because you're going away from the actual values that kind of made this brand what it is, right? Have have the odd player around the squad at least and give him the chance. If a Piyush Chawla and a Karan Sharma can play, please, I'm sure there are enough and more here who we feel represent us and can play as well. And that is important for this brand. So maybe we got an arrow there in our vision. I don't know. That's something that I've always wanted to talk a lot more about.
Okay, so crucial question. As a CSK fan, should Vijay Shankar or Raidu have been picked in the Indian team?
No. We should not get
dangerous question.
Dangerous question, but still, I think Raidu should have gotten into it. Honestly,
yeah, absolutely. It's a Raidu. I mean, I don't associate. I don't associate Vijay Shankar with CSK. Unfortunately, even though I'm sure he's a fan and he's Tamil Nadu, but.
Bro, Madipakam represent.
Yeah, but technically he hasn't played for CSK. I mean, he's a Chennai guy, but he's not associated with CSK. I just asked for CSK. But more, I mean, from the CSK angle, you know, I mean, when you see the Ashwin and Jadeja fighting for a test spot, for instance, you know, as they were a few years ago and as they could be later, I don't know. You know what? How does that? Is there like any kind of thing there, or is it more like an individual fandom, or is it a Chennai thing, or does it come in at all?
I think Ashwin versus Jadeja, on a more specific note, I think I've always been pro Ashwin because I felt he's the more attacking option as a bowler. But that's got nothing to do with, you know, whether he's playing for CSK, not playing for CSK, who's playing for CSK. I think maybe early on, I remember, you know, there'd be some places where I'd get defensive about players who were playing for CSK and their role in India and things like that. But I think as the years have gone by, I think fans have become a lot better in separating those loyalties of what the India team needs and what the Chennai team needs. And I don't know if SA feels differently, but that's what I've seen.
I think that's a fair point. That's because of, if you look at it in two different phases, I would have definitely had a problem with, if this Ashwin Jadeja situation you bring up, Sidvi, I would have had a problem with it if it happened in the first 5 years of IPL. Because, I would have had a problem choosing. But when their legacies are cemented at an IPL level and at a national level, then it's easy to separate. You're just looking at it because it's not like, and Ashwin is a legend, whether he's fighting with a Jadeja or not, and Jaddu is also a legend in his own right? So in that sense, by the time we got to this particular context you're drawing, I think it is easier to separate. But had it been in the first 5 years, when CSK were also trying to prove something in the IPL tournament, and the CSK players in the national level was also trying to make a mark, that time, if I have to choose someone who I see in my eyes emotionally suffering in terms of wanting a position for himself at a domestic level and at an international level, I'd probably side with the person that is with my organization. I mean, the team I support.
And this whole that expectation that CSK fans have to be parochial and very territorial about their team is an outward perception of us. It's not our perception of ourselves, right? Like, just because Tamil is our strong identity, it doesn't mean that we will give up following the Indian team, because what brought us into cricket is us following the game and being fans of people like Marquardt and stuff like that. So it's not, we are not strangers to, the international game, and we are not strangers to the games where Tamil people are not represented. That's not the expectation at all. This is just a perception that comes from the rest of India onto the people on Tamil Nadu. Secondly, specifically with Ashwin and Jadeja, earlier Ashwin was clearly the leader of the pack when it comes to test bowling, but recently Jadeja has had such a great record with the ball and the bat. Now it's really understandable if the team can't fit in two spinners, then one of them has to sit out. So that's kind of the view. That's kind of the view I think is general, and it has nothing to do with CSK loyalty or parochial or territorial support. That's just an optics.
And I think it's also format, right? Like they are fighting for a spot in the test format, while CSK is a T20 team. I mean, this is not like soccer, where soccer is the same format across World Cup and EPL and all is the same. So then you have all these loyalty factors coming in, whether you have Messi or whether you have Ronaldo and all that. But this is a different format. So maybe like if they were fighting for a spot for like the Indian T20 squad in the World Cup, like a World T20 spot, if Ashwin and Jadeja are fighting, though I don't think they will be fighting, but if they are, then maybe that conflict could come in. But as of now, test team, I think, is a different situation altogether.
But to extend this, Sidvi, because you bring this this point of, hey, do you have a conflict? I'll tell you where, instead of a conflict, something nice happens, something unexpected. Is when you see an international CSK player in his international team, no, you kind of root for that person a lot more. Like, I remember wanting George Bailey to do that much well because CSK kind of picked him way before he went on his good phase in Australia. I remember rooting for Faf so much more than I wouldn't have given a toss about Faf on his own had we not identified him as early as we did. And I was like, who's this guy? What's his name? Faf. Even something as Sam Curran today. That guy is so cute as a cricketer. It's like when I see England, I'm just like, I'm rooting for Faf, Sam Curran just because he's a CSK guy. Stuff like that. So I think that is a different situation that pops up.
Which is also very good. Which is also very good because the parochialism is taken away, right? Then automatically, like when India are playing England, and if Sam Curran does well, you're actually being the knowledgeable fan who is supporting Sam Curran because of your association. Yeah, that is a good thing. I mean, I think that's also something that Fantasy League is bringing in as well. I mean, which is all part of IPL as well, because in Fantasy League also, when you're watching the game, you're also supporting your team rather than, your fantasy team rather than just your real team as well, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's why SA here was supporting, Mitchell Marsh when Gale was making 175 against Pune.
I told you, I'm all about underdogs. I captained Mitchell Marsh that day.
One of the great days in RCB history. Thank you for bringing it up. By the way, for listeners, I'm not an RCB fan, okay? I am from Bangalore, but I just like following RCB for comedy value.
That is every RCB fan ever.
Everyone follows RCB for comedy value only.
No, and also he's saying everyone follows RCB for opportunism. Sadly, that opportunity has not come yet. Yeah. Anyway, so but crucial point, especially because this is a team that one of the two teams that did face this the ban and they were out. The point of supporting a team that then gets embroiled in big controversy, not necessarily. I mean, in this case, it was more from the owner perspective. It was not like from the player perspective, like the Indian team fans saw in the 90s and 2000s. But still, I mean, there is a sense of. I mean, there are two things, right? I know a set of CSK fans who are very deeply who are hurt about it, saying, they shouldn't have done it. And there is the other set of CSK fans who are angry about it, saying these guys are just framing us. This is nothing to do with us. We have not made any mistake. They're just framing us. So which camp were you in? And generally, can you talk about that phase, which you might have had to, question many things about your loyalty as well as the team?
Yeah. So during those phases that I was in the camp that can we transfer ownership, because the problem was with the owners and a huge conflict of interest where administrators were owning teams and running the team, and there was obviously charges of corruption and fixing and whatnot. So I was thinking that maybe they should have transferred ownership to another willing party, because by and large, the majority of the team were not implicated in this deal. So I was thinking that the franchise could have gone on under a different management, but they chose not to do it. But I did feel that, the CSK being banned as an entity was a bit too much because of the reasons that the administration didn't want to change, and they wanted to keep that entity, and therefore they couldn't play the IPL. I was thinking that maybe they could have done that and
so
let the team continue.
The decision to ban them was a step too far.
The decision to ban the players and the players having to fend themselves off as a fan, it felt that it was harsh on the fans more than anything else, because the players themselves were not implicated, right? And so that was slightly harsher on the fans. And it felt like slightly, we didn't do anything to deserve this, was the idea. It's not that I wouldn't go to the extent to say that nobody did anything wrong and it was all a frame up. This is all a 9/11 part of conspiracy. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that we got hard changed. It's the fans at the end of the day who got hard changed by the entire process. And you could see that when Dhoni went to Pune and there was a separate Gujarat team that happened. Even Bravo and other players felt that they still had that CSK identity in them, right? Even though they were playing for different franchises. And there was also this tricky situation where Dhoni had to give up captaincy so that Steve Smith could be captain or whatnot. there was still that CSK identity in two teams rather than one team. It felt like the fans were getting shortchanged rather than anybody else who was implicated in the matter.
Yeah, I remember distinctly that phase. I think the final that year was Chennai versus Mumbai, and all of this stuff with Chantila and Srishant and all of that stuff started coming out in that week before the playoffs. And I remember watching that final, and it was the most distanced I felt watching a cricket game I've ever felt, because all of this stuff is going on in the background, and here are these guys pretending nothing's happening, and the commentators are not mentioning it. They're pretending like it's just another game, and Mumbai win and they're celebrating. It was a very, very weird experience. And I think for me personally, I think that was the year I moved to Australia as well from India, and it kind of helped because the next 2 years, because of the time zones and things like that, it's actually difficult to follow the IPL here compared to being in India. But not having a CSK I had the opportunity to kind of detox from that feeling for a couple of years, so that when they actually came back, I felt ready to welcome them back, I think. Yeah, so I get what AB1 is saying, but I think to an extent it helped me, for example, where I felt like I had that time to recover from that feeling, which I otherwise wouldn't have had if the team had been in existence for those 2 years.
Did you feel it was justified, or did you feel that they were being punished, or what? I mean, what was the feeling there?
It's hard to know, right? Because what's in the open, but you hear so many conspiracy theories. There were so many conspiracy theories at the time. You look at the first few seasons in the IPL, especially that season in South Africa. There was so many games and so much stuff that, there was talk about, that looked dodgy and things like that. So it's very difficult to actually separate what is fact and what is fiction at times, because there's only so much that is in the public domain. Like right now, there is the famous sealed envelope that people keep bringing up with respect to some of the Chennai guys. There are 10 players on that list. It's 100% sure that that's not just Chennai players on that list in that sealed envelope. So there is so much that we don't know that it's very hard to know what to feel about it beyond a point. So I think over that 2 years, I kind of got to a space where I rationalized that, there's only so much that I know. So I'm just going to enjoy the fact that this is a Chennai team and move on. And it gave me that time and space to kind of reflect and get to that point.
I'll try and add something different, because I kind of agree with whatever Tejas brought up. I felt the same way, in the sense, that final was the most frustrating one. I was so angry about how the media was just focusing on this, and the sport was getting sidetracked, and the sport was not acknowledging this. And as a fan, as a consumer, you don't know what to root for or what to, there's one side of me that's really wanting to like protect the players or Dhoni and the team, to say, hey, in case, because back then we still don't know who's in the right and who's in the wrong. So you're like, in case if we as fans could make you feel a lot better about emotionally, so you can go and compete at your best, we wanted to contribute to that, right? Because as fans, you still want to protect your team there, but at the other side, there's so much chaos on figuring out the fact and fiction part. So it was a very, very bad period. I thought the only thing I remember feeling when we got banned, because like I have people in the organization also who I know, and they called me to come and attend rallies where they were protesting and outside the stadium, asking for the IPL to not ban the organization. The fans can't be the losers at the end of it, blah, blah, blah. I remember pinging one of our Twitter friends, Ananta, I'm sure you all know. I remember asking him, saying, I'm torn. I don't know. There's one part of me that agrees, but there's other part of me that doesn't have all the facts and couldn't get to the bottom of it. I want to be there, but at the same time, I don't know what's the right and wrong of it. So this whole experience was very, 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 I want to forget. I felt, if anything, in looking back at it, I felt the city, we've seen football examples of this, right? When Wimbledon went down, they had MK Dons pop up. It's not still Wimbledon, but there are other alternatives of making sure the city gets it, because ultimately the reason why this whole thing works is the representation of that city and that legacy behind it. So to handle it this way, I don't know who took that call. I don't know if it's the ownership not wanting to let go and letting the city continue, etc., wanting to keep that legacy as it is. So there's just too many factors in play. I felt it was just unfair for a city that has contributed so much to this whole IPL narrative, literally putting South on the map through this whole Chennai thing. A lot of what Chennai Super Kings is represented is the other part of the country that I feel doesn't get heard enough and all that, right? So to see that being removed this way is something I felt wasn't fair. But what solution? I don't know, man. I really don't. I haven't seen any argument out there for it as well. But yeah, I didn't follow IPL for 2 years because as far as I was concerned, that is me punishing the IPL. You don't get my views and my money for the next 2 years, man. If you're not making me watch my team, then you don't get my attention. Go.
I think that's not surprising though. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't nominate the BCCI as someone who actually cares about what the fans feel or things. Look at the stadium experiences we've had for so many years, the broadcast deals and all of that. There's not one stage in the entire history of Indian cricket where you could say the BCCI cared about the following and the fans or anything. So it's very in keeping with how Indian cricket has been run for decades.
But surely there must have been quite a bit of a surreal feeling when, at that particular stage, you had Dhoni pretty much being like quite in the center of it as well, because number one, because of his, interactions with Gurunath, and also that famous press conference where he sat saying nothing. Of course, one can argue that, he was on a hiding to nothing. Whatever he had said would have put him in trouble. And so, he rather took the hit by saying, okay, I'm just going to keep silent. Or maybe he was told to keep silent as well, either way. But there was, for perception-wise, it was quite surreal to see Dhoni, who was like at the peak of his popularity, India's World Cup winning captain, CSK legend, already a CSK legend, being in that spotlight, and yet came across as a bit of obfuscation in the whole thing. And of course, the whole enthusiast bit, where Gurunath was palmed off as an enthusiast when clearly, everyone knew that he was very much integral to the team. All that must have brought on disappointment as well. I mean, it brought on disappointment for me, who was not even like an ardent CSK fan. So I'm wondering if it did for you.
Yeah, it did. And it brought a lot of disrepute, right? Like, whenever any kind of organization runs on integrity, and this was questioning the very integrity of the organization, and when a lot of things, not just that, I mean, the climate of cricket was that not just Gurunath Meyyappan's thing, but also in the larger scheme of Indian cricket, when the administration was questioned and the entire thing had to change. A lot of fingers were pointed because of how N. Srinivasan was running things, and so there was a countrywide contempt for CSK, and that has not changed till date. Like, whenever CSK wins today, a certain population thinks, they might have cheated. So that stigma is very hard to get rid of, and it was an unfortunate situation for everybody involved, and it was not a very good thing to do for a franchise which is so passionate about its cricket and the people who identify themselves with the franchise. So that's a blow I don't think we'll be ever free from that. But I felt that end of the day, the people who really, really got the short end of the stick were the fans who are sticking through the thick and thin. And they will have to bear the brunt of it no matter what CSK does from now on, because that narrative, however small or fringe that narrative is not going away at all.
I think I'd like to point out now's a perfect time to see how this is a difference between how India looks at sports and, say, take England again, the European Super League. For those of you who are unaware, it's these supposedly Big 12 clubs decide to start their own league because they want a bigger slice of the pie. The reaction towards that, the whole harmony when it comes to saying the sport is for the fans, no matter how much money we make for it, and to make every single top down from the whole organization end up agreeing to it. That idea got scrapped. The individuals who decided that have all resigned. The club you have the biggest stakeholders and the ambassadors of the club coming out and calling out the club. That level of discourse You have a Gary Neville, a Manchester United legend, to come out and say, this is an absolute joke. I'm ashamed of my club. I'm embarrassed of my club, and I love my club to bits. That is the difference in culture. I wish we had approached that time with this kind of sensitivity and this kind of prioritization when it comes to what are we doing this for. So like Tejas said, in India, sport is just yet another exploitative means for capitalism, and it so happens that some of us end up getting such emotional satisfaction out of it and narratives built in our own head. But at the end of the day, we all know what it's there for, and we should just draw our boundaries to protect ourselves from it. It's a shame, because I feel a lot more connected to a Leeds United than to a CSK when I see things like this happen, simply because I know the CSK thing I'm building in my head. Given a chance, I'm pretty sure India Cements would do the next business decision once Dhoni is out, for example. I wouldn't be surprised to see them shut it down and go if there's no money out of it. That, as opposed to saying, hey, the legacy has to go on.
Yeah, I think that also takes time. I mean, that is also the English Premier soccer in Europe has been going on for so long that I think this Super League backlash is a classic example of it. I mean, you cannot just abandon, almost, is what they were doing, which is why it basically lasted less than 2 days. I think everyone just basically said get out, and it proved. But I think for IPL to get there, it'll take that level of maturity. But what I wanted to know is that you guys are speaking about fans, but interestingly, what I want to know is, were you disappointed with how the BCCI basically came to this decision to ban them? Or were you also disappointed with how the CSK management itself was running the organization without any proper care towards people who were in there, and all the Gurnath doing that? Which was the more disappointing thing? I wanted.
I felt that CSK should have handled that better as an organization, and there should have been a lot of accountability that comes of. I mean, end of the day, all obligations, they have a business obligations to be profitable and keep the show running, but it's for the fans, right? Like, so as SA says, people are held to a higher standard because it's all happening in the public domain. It's not just the organization, even the fans. I mean, Dhoni keeping silent in the press conference was also an example that, like, if you want to be adored, that's the positive side of cricket, right? Like, millions of fans look up to you, they idolize you and stuff. That brings in a certain level of accountability as well, and responsibility as well. And therefore, it is the onus is on the organization that is running this franchise and on the players that are playing for the franchise to stand up and say, hey, mistakes were made, and we should be upfront about it, and we should talk about it, and we should help in the investigations in whatever way possible, so that justice is served and the game returns back to normalcy. Unfortunately, none of those things happened, either from CSK's end or from BCCI end, and therefore a disproportionate punishment for the franchise, which I see as a punishment on the fans, not on the franchise, because end of the day, the players got their paychecks via other franchises, right? Who lost in the deal was the people supporting for CSK, because they didn't get a CSK those 2 years. That was the only loss. Everyone else seemed to have made their money out of various other means. And that's the tragedy of it.
And we're left with a tainted legacy and we are doing all the answering, and we'll continue to do all the answering with very little access to facts. It's an extremely disappointing situation where we can see in our culture, fans are the least of our priority, man. They couldn't really care less about it. From the stadium experience to the play. Look, the English Premier League players are coming out, calling out this decision, saying the owners did something. I had nothing to do with it, and I don't stand for it. Like, that's as simple as just somebody just telling the world what they feel after a match that they played, right? So it's not like it was out of context. If all of that is possible, to see our players never address any of it, even the documentary that they did when we came back and we won, even you go through it makes me feel like it's almost like somebody's holding a card to them and asking them to read this out, as opposed to actually telling them to explore their feeling. But that can never be done, because there's just so much control in terms of every communication that goes out in India and sports that you just can't really expect anything else.
You look at other international leagues, right? You look at what's happened with the pandemic and the went out of their way to engage with fans over that time period where they knew fans couldn't come to the stadiums, couldn't support their teams in person. They tied up with Microsoft.
NBA
They tied up with
yeah.
Microsoft, tried to get, people on screen during the matches. There are lots of these different things that other leagues in the world do to engage their fans. But Indian cricket seems to live in a world where, they know that no matter what they do, those fans will keep coming back for more punishment and more cricket. So they're almost taken for granted, right? So if you look at how, this whole thing's been dealt with, I don't think, the fans have even gotten an apology for what's happened, either in 99 through the match fixing scandal or this. There's a constant debate between the officials and the players and the media, and they keep arguing with themselves. And the fans, the main stakeholders, if you will, get nothing out of that whole circle jerk.
Yeah, in fact, the ownership
99, forget about it. I mean, the players who were involved in 99 are now thriving. Whoever fixing. I mean, there is, in fact, and even in this particular scandal, I mean, whoever Srishant and all, I mean, they're back pretty much. I mean, he's even playing cricket. So, it's not like they've ever had any policy of zero tolerance. And of course, that is one thing. But at the same time, for a fan's perspective, it makes a big difference.
And in our case, the ownership kind of tried to use the whole fan sentiment and also position themselves as, hey, look at how they're all feeling so sad. Even we are feeling so sad. Do you need this? I'm like, they're playing the victim here. I'm like, bro, we are feeling sad. You bloody are not the victim. You come and tell us why we shouldn't feel sad, or tell us what you're going to do about it, or come clean on it. No. So that's when I realized, okay, this is going a different track altogether, man. They're also acting like the system is against us. I'm like, what? You are the system, man. What do you mean?
So usually after like this kind of scandal, I mean, the intuitive thing is that, okay, people are frustrated. People are, you said you moved to, because you moved to Australia, it also had a chance for you to detox and all that. But it was almost also as if it was a hunger building up. Because when they came back, it was insane. Like people, I mean, I think they played that in Pune, right? They didn't even play in Chepauk because they shifted the home venue. And then this whole train's going to Pune with fans and supporting them. And they also had success. They won that season, which was, again, an amazing victory through the season. So I think that almost like just seamlessly brought it all back.
Yeah, even that was fixed. So now I can't even celebrate. You see what this does to us?
Yeah. All right. So anyway, having spoken for so long and having had a wonderful discussion, I think we covered some good ground and got through quite a few points. So sure. Thanks, man. Thanks, Arvind. Thanks, Tejas. Thanks, Ashoka.
See you, Raj.
Thanks, everyone.
See you,
Stay
Ashoka.
guys.
Thanks.
Bye, Sidvi.
That brings us to the end of another episode of the 81 All Out podcast. If you enjoy the work we do, please support us via coffee.com. That is ko-fi.com/81allout. You can find the link in the show notes. It will allow you to either set up a recurring monthly payment or to throw in a one-time contribution. As I mentioned at the start of this episode, all your contributions till the end of June will go towards COVID relief in India, and we will match your contributions up to $800. Stay safe and mask up. Goodbye.